I'm going to do a product overview for the 8x8 matrix from Labgear. This is a very high-end matrix. So as the name would indicate on it, it takes in a total of 8 HDMI inputs from various devices, we'll say Sky boxes, Android boxes, etc., and allows you to output the 8 different TVs, monitors, etc., and be able to do so independently of each other and operate it independently. In terms of the specification of the picture it can handle, it can do it, it can support 4K, Ultra HD and also 3D. And in terms of the outputs on it, you can send the signal out via a HDMI lead or alternatively over a Cat5 cable, which is converted from HD into Cat5 signal, and then it's converted via a unit such as this receiver here, which converts it back to HD. And the big advantage, you will say, of using the Cat5 route is threefold. The first thing is that we can get much longer run lengths. So where HDMI is normally limited to about 20 meters before we need to start using repeaters, etc. With the Cat5, we can have run lengths of 50 meters. In terms of the ability then with the IR functionality that comes in the Cat5 version here on this receiver, we can actually control the matrix, and also we can also control the set-top box in the far end remotely from the sensors here. And then the final point is that obviously an awful lot of units are pre-wired with Cat5 cables, but not with HDMI. So it's much easier to retrofit this or connect into an existing network system using a unit here via the Cat5 cables. Now the one thing I'm going to say in what's in front of me here is this is actually the 4x4 model, but it's exactly the same logic in terms of how it's set up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give an overview of this in relation to it, but in terms of this, they're all from Labgear. Just when we went to do this video here, we just didn't have the 8x8 to hand, but it's exactly the same. It's a single unit, and in terms of functionality here. So what you'd have basically is you'd have a user manual coming with a remote control, an IR sensor here which would allow us to actually work this if it was in a rack position using these brackets. So we could have this out of the way in a cabinet and be operating the whole unit via this remote control. And then we come with power units here for powering the entire matrix as well. One is powering the actual power unit itself. The other part is powering the POH, which gives us the ability to work the sensors remotely over the Cat5 via a single power unit in the center. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to come around to the front of the unit and just talk about it briefly. So how this would work, we'll say. So what you'd have here is you'd have the display of all of your outputs and the inputs that correspond to it, and you can choose which input and output you have by the buttons on the front or the remote control here, and you have an ability then just to power on and off the unit. If we just come along and I look at the back of the unit, which really is where the event's happening, what we'd have here is we'd have a total of 8 HDMI inputs here, and we'd have 8 modules for outputs here. And fundamentally, we can output in one of two ways. We can output it via HDMI lead. So if we had a TV, you would say, 20 meters away, where we just want to be able to set the setting to it. It's close to the matrix. We come along, we set the output here. It's a very competitive and effective way of doing it. Connect the HDMI lead in, off, we're sorted. But the limitations of using the HDMI lead is that you can't get the 70 meter runs you can with Cat5, and also you can't either control the matrix or the set-top box remotely, okay, from a sensor in front. Now if we wanted to go the other route, which is using Cat5 cable, such as this here, we can output it, and if we could imagine this was running quite a considerable distance, on the far end of it what we'd be using is a receiver unit similar to this one. We plug it in and we run a HDMI cable from here directly into our local TV, and at that point then we can now view the output from the matrix directly onto that TV. If we wanted to be able to control the matrix remotely, what we could do is we just come along, we just plug this sensor in here now, and now we could pick up the remote control that comes with this receiver unit. Now you can choose to buy 1 or 8 of these receiver units. It's up to yourself, depending on how many outputs you have and whether you want to use the HDMI cable for some of them. But what we can do is just go click, click, input 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 8, okay? And we can choose it that way. And if on the further to that, if we want to actually come along and be able to control, we'll say, the Sky box that was on input number 4, what we do is we put a sensor in here and put this sensor directly in front of the Sky, or it's actually the emitter really, to send the signal directly to the skybox, we'll say, to tell it to change channels. And now suddenly if I grab the Sky remote control, sends a signal down through here or via the Cat5 cable and sends a signal directly out to, we'll say, input number 4 if it was, to say change the channels there. So to that extent it's really neat. So in the range we have the 4x4 and the 8x8 in the very high-end professional range. It's up against in that market space by a lot of other premium brands. The big advantage of this is twofold. So it's matching it exactly, we'll say, in terms of the premium brands, in terms of quality, and indeed in terms of functionality, it's actually exceeding it. But the two big advantages is it's coming in at a price point that's much, much lower than the other premium brands, is the first thing. And then the second thing that's fantastic with the Labgear product is that we are able to come along and it's offered in a modular format. So instead of being with the 8x8 matrix here, being forced to buy, we'll say, the unit and the 8 receivers to go with it, what you can actually do is you can buy the unit and then make a decision at that time or a later point to add on 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 8 receivers here, depending on how you want to set it up. So it really is a fantastic product to that extent. So that's it anyway, an overview of the 8x8 matrix from Labgear, available on freetv.ie.